Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday, everybody. What's up? What's up? What's going on, Callow?
Hey, not much. How about those Orioles? You like them?
Oh, I've seen a lot of clips about them, making the rounds, ex-GMs, things like that, being asked, what would you do about this? I've already got it solved for you. I mean, you got to get something done with like Gunnar Henderson to send a statement to everybody. And Jackson Holiday, you leave alone, but you make sure he knows that you really, 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 really like him. Sure. And then basically everybody else, like you start asset managing quickly with new people making decisions. Like they need two GMs on this team. One drafted really well and now doesn't know what to do with all the players that they have. And they clearly have no player development program either. So enjoy Orioles baseball on ESPN 630 at 1 p.m. today when they take on the Brewers.
I will say this. I have the same question about the Orioles that I do about the Nats. How much spending was Mike Elias allowed to do? I have that question because we've had that question with the Nats for years now, and we never really get an answer because they don't talk to anybody. So, I mean, it's like the Wizard of Oz over there. We don't get to, ask them any questions. I just have that question about the Orioles, but either way, yes, I think a dismantling of some sort has got to be coming for that franchise.
What happened to the owner? He was out there, very present. All of a sudden, the only time you see him talk is when he does a panel with other business leaders.
Right.
Like he's not talking anymore. This is not good when you don't speak to the public because then people get ideas. Okay? People get ideas. We live this with the Commanders forever with Dan Snyder. You didn't talk to the public. When you don't talk to or you do it so rarely or make a weird inside joke that nobody understands, then I think like this is where the problem is. So Mr. Rubenstein, like it's time to talk again. You just fired your manager. Your team is underperforming wildly. You need to answer some questions. You don't have to do this all the time. You don't have to be Jerry Jones. But you got to speak to the public, especially in moments like this. So hopefully, like, they'll come forward. Elias won't even do the GM won't even do a press conference after firing the manager.
He did one yesterday. He did do it yesterday.
Oh, he did it?
He did. Yeah. And he did actually like address that. He was like, I had to get people in here that were about to manage the team that had never managed a baseball team before. So he's like, that's why I'm doing it now. And I didn't do it over the weekend. I also was kind of like,
also a terrible excuse to say. I can't talk to you because I'm getting people who have no experience doing this up to speed and onboarded on a team that's totally sinking. Like that's not a great answer either.
Also convenient that you hit the road after that series. So you know how this works with covering baseball. The media contingent is a quarter of what it is at home.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and also, honestly, the media contingent is an eighth of what it used to be in general. And, I understand when teams don't feel this necessity to speak much to the media anymore because their audiences are smaller than they used to be. Like you could narrow it down to a couple different outlets that really, really have reach any longer.
Right.
You've got to talk to the Baltimore Sun if you're there. I think you got to talk to the Baltimore Banner. And if there is ESPN or Fox, you have to talk to them. That's about it.
Yeah,
that's about it, really.
I'd say the reporters at The Athletic too, like Jason Stark.
Sure.
If that's an option. But no, absolutely. And I just remember seeing that go, all right, you have an excuse, but you also are doing it on the road and there's not as many people there. So I would say this too about Rubenstein as well. Like that dude, I'm glad he milked it the first year and a half because he did the splash zone and was doing the press conference. It was a fan favorite. He had a freaking bobblehead earlier this year that people were already like a little lukewarm about. So I'm glad he got it in to play around with the franchise because now the real work is seemingly going to start.
Right. And I mean, like, it's one thing when you just have a team that doesn't have a lot of talent or you're extremely young and you got to deal with the criticism of something like that. It's a whole other thing when you do have the talent and you're underperforming. That's a whole, and everybody knows it. That's a whole different can of worms. Like, trust me, there are GMs lining up waiting to talk to them.
Yep.
Because they're looking at this group and they're going, who aren't you keeping? Who are you moving on from? Sure. They're going to have willing pursuer. Like, this isn't the Pirates of 5 years ago where they get a million calls about Paul Skeens, but like they don't have 15 A-plus prospects that are sitting there. The Orioles do, and they don't seem to know how to handle it. So this is going to be interesting spring, summer, fall, really winter, when they probably make their final moves and get I would assume, new decision makers in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it kind of, to just keep on like kind of paralleling with the Nats too. Like we kind of said, the Nats need to make a splash, right? Well, the Orioles are now overdue to make a splash.
They are.
I don't even care if it's a veteran. I don't care if it's a starter that you need to overpay for a little bit. You need to tell the fan base, you need to tell the franchise, honestly, those who play in it, that we are here, that we're for real. Yes. And that's not happened yet.
There needs to be a reboot and a recommitment to the people who are the pillars of your team. And you've got a lot of choices with that. There are a couple of very obvious ones that you like. I think you need to feel secure, put them in leadership positions, tell them we're going to get this settled. It's a new day. Right. But they need new decision makers to do that. So we'll see what ends up happening. All right. I want to get to this. So I don't think this is a big deal. I don't think it's a big deal. All right. But
here we go, Jim.
It's an interesting thing to say. Interesting thing to say. The wife of Josh Harris, Majorie Harris, did a charity event. I think it was yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before? I don't know. I didn't hear about this till last night. Got a lot of texts about it last night from people. All over the country, but some locally too. They were like, "Did you hear what she said?" And I said, "No." And then it went on Twitter and I saw, because, it's not going to make a million rounds, like you have to be in our silo to find this. And she called the Commanders America's team, which, obviously America's team is kind of taken. Whether you think they are or aren't anymore, doesn't even really matter anymore. I still think we all agree that they kind of own that. Like the Cowboys kind of own that. And you kind of can't take it away. And I would say this, do you want to? I don't actually know that you actually really want to take that away from them, because that doesn't seem to be working for them very well anymore. In fact, it seems to have the opposite effect. Like when it used to be that we had 3 TV networks, 1 radio station, and 2 newspapers being called America's team because they were the only team you could see play every week, actually really mattered. But now that you can see everybody play all the time, I don't know that you want this, because I don't think you want whoever, Stephen A. Smith is going to be crawling on you all day long. So beware of what you wish for on that one, calling yourself America's team, because America's team brings a type of pressure in the modern media cycle that actually isn't great. Go ask the Cowboys about that.
I was going to say, go ask the Chiefs about that. Look at what the Chiefs have become. Like, I think it's really funny with their transformation of, they went from best young quarterback in the league. I still think Mahomes is the best in the league. That's not what I'm getting at here. But best head coach and one of the best head coaches in the league, all the way now to when they win, they cheat. Like that's how the Kansas City Chiefs have evolved into that. Like that is mind blowing, honestly, when you say that out loud. When you think about what the Chiefs were, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, yeah. They were a classic franchise, not the one that people were saying the refs are conspiring with to win. So, yeah, being America's team is a little...
They'd never won a Super Bowl until 7-8 years ago.
Right. Yeah. So, be careful what you wish for there, because you're right, too. When you kind of want that moniker, all the criticisms come along with it. And we joked about it with the Cowboys, too, that, even when they're good, everyone is waiting, okay, when's the collapse going to happen? And it happens. And everyone is right there to pounce and eat it.
We are in an upside down world. Actually garnering a lot of attention is the way to popularity, but it is also the way to polarization of your brand and your team. Back in the day, if your star player was dating the most famous woman in the world, that would be considered a really good thing. Right. Now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It brings the type of attention on you that actually a lot of people don't make fun of, actually criticize, Then you got Mahomes, and everybody loves him until he wins too much, which is always the case. Till he wins too much, then it becomes the enemy. Andy Reid, lovable head coach who'd been losing too much, but should have deserved to win. Now they're done with him. So I agree. This is going to be an interesting cycle for us if the trajectory is what we think it is with this team, whether it's this year or not. This team is kind of set up to be good for a while, based largely on the quarterback looks so good that we have one of those guys. We have our Mahomes, we have our Josh Allen, we have our Lamar Jackson, and we're going to be good, hopefully, for a while. I will say this. because when I saw her say it, and I'm like, I hope this isn't a big deal, because and if it gets under the Cowboys fan skin, fine. Like that's totally fine. I don't mind if it's a troll in some ways. I don't really mind it, because ever since the benches and all that stuff with them, I've been waiting for the moment that we get to kind of step on them a little bit. And if that's all this kind of was, it's fine. If you're wishing this on us, careful what you wish for, right? Just be careful what you wish for. I agree. Like Detroit was last year in the NFL, I think we are kind of the darling. I think that's probably the way to put it. The Commanders are the darling of the NFL right now. Everybody's really curious about it. Only we who were on the ride in it every week know what it was a year ago. Everyone else heard about it, right? Then saw what happened in the playoffs. And then now are all of a sudden going, you can't get away from us this year because we're on the national slot just about every other week. So you're not going to be able to get away from it. I would tread lightly, though. And I wonder what DQ thinks about this, because the first thing out of his mouth when the things got popular last year was don't ride the roller coaster. He's got to manage expectations. He's got to manage the team. And now he's got to manage the ownership calling themselves America's team. So the job has gotten interesting here. Like, let's all slow down. We're all psyched about this. Slow down. What was it? Stay medium.
Stay medium. It's the best.
Stay medium here. Of all things, of lessons we've learned through the years, stay medium really applies right now.
That was the greatest thing to come from Jim Zorn. There's nothing else that really has stuck for that long. But I would say this too. I'm sure Quinn and Peters today are like, well, it's May 21st, so I'm glad they said it now and not, in the middle of August at the, the welcome home luncheon or whatever, where there's a bunch of media there. But it's not going to surprise me that when they go to Dallas, this comes back around that, like, the ownership's wife called them America's team. Like, how the NFL works. Everyone puts everything into a binder and then opens it back up as soon as they're about to play with each other. And one thing I'll say on this too is, we all love Dan Quinn. We all love Jaden Daniels here. We all love Adam Peters. I'm betting by primetime game number 4, the NFL fan bases are going to be sick about hearing about us, because I just know how I operate too.
I don't know, actually. I have a feeling we're kind of the darling like Detroit was. Everybody was kind of rooting for them because they'd never won. They've never been like this. Never been like where they were like the dominant team. Never been like this.
I agree, but that's the difference here. And I actually have said this with other people, is that Detroit has never won. Like the Lions, Detroit has never won, right? This franchise has. People my age grew up with their parents telling them how good they had it, right? And we never got to see it.
That's true.
And then when we got a taste of it last year, for lack of a better term, we got obnoxious about it in the best way. Like, we were finally like, we deserve this. We're the best, whatever. That Tampa playoff game with the amount of Commanders fans that showed up, and after that game we're celebrating, we clicked back into being a winning fan base very, very fast. I'm just saying, I think after 4 or 5 primetime games, after, Tirico has talked about it for the 5th time of Dan Snyder's gone and the turnaround and all this, I just know how this works. The other NFL fan bases are going to get sick of us because they're going to hear the same story over and over again. And then Jaden Daniels is going to beat whoever it is by 2 touchdowns. Like, that's what's going to happen. That's what I think is going to happen.
Ooh, this is a tough one because it's been a long time since there's been real deserved expectations put on the team. There were, for a long time, early in the Snyder era, especially amid the coaching hires, the player acquisitions, when it wasn't in vogue to go out and buy all these great names and put them out there. Like, the expectations were there, but they weren't warranted, right? Like, that's what we learned early. They weren't warranted. You can't just go out and get a bunch of aging free agents, even if they have Hall of Fame credentials, and just assume that that's going to turn you into. We learned this. We were kind of the poster child of, this is not what you do. Right. But you're trying to go too fast. You're trying to skip the system. You're trying to play baseball. Like, you're trying to go buy your team. And in football, that kind of doesn't work. And it's been a long time. How many times have we talked about this, you and I, where I'm like, because we're of a different generation. that you don't know what it's like when they're good because you've never literally seen it. And when I was young, I saw it. Like, I know what it is here when it happens. So it's been a really long time. So I think we're in the middle here where, no, they're not the Lions. They have actually a history of periods of time where they were really good and at one point dominant and won a bunch of Super Bowls. And no one will ever forget that part. That's not the Lions. The Lions have either been dreck or barely okay for like the majority of their existence. And them becoming the dominant, fun-loving team who has the best offense in the league, that was a first for them. So that was actually new, interesting. And I think a lot of us were kind of like, with Buffalo, kind of like, I kind of hope you win. You know, like if somebody has to win and it's not going to be us, I kind of hope it's you because you kind of deserve it. We're not that. But it's been a full 30 years of it. Like it's been a long, like your lifetime is not seeing the Commanders like this. Like where it's real legitimate expectations with a real legitimate quarterback with a franchise that looks set up to actually sustain it and win. You haven't had that. So it's been so I think a younger generation is going to be 50-50. The older generation might be like, oh, I'm sick. Don't tell me about their darlings. Like they used to be dominant. But people like your age who are watching the NFL now, you've never seen the team like this. So I don't know. It's somewhere in there.
Like I said, it's a little bit in the middle, but we've been like, my generation was told growing up, oh, how good they were, right? Like, and, you know, it's going to, like, basically, we were promised, this is a microcosm of America. We were promised a really good football team, and when we grew up, it wasn't there until now. So that's what essentially happened with the fan base with people my age. What I would say, though, is, like, the Lions were so terrible, you even had their division rivals be like, it's about damn time they got good. Even Packers, Vikings, Bears, fans.
They had lost. I don't remember what the stat was, but they hadn't won at Green Bay, and they play every year there, and they hadn't won there in like 25 years or something like that. It's like you'd get lucky and win one of those games.
Yes.
Like, how could any NFL team lose to a division rival on the road every time?
Yeah.
How could that happen?
And so you even had their division fan bases kind of be like, good for them. It's about time. Like that hate wasn't really for them because they were never that. It didn't.
That's true. Nobody in Dallas, Philly, or New York are like, oh, this is cool.
That's
None of them are.
Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would say we've made Eagles fans more insecure than ever because they hate that they won the Super Bowl and all of a sudden we're still on more primetime games, that everyone's talking about us, that I'm looking at prominent NFL people that are calling the Commanders the 1 seed off of the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. Like, I'm just saying, our other rival fan bases are like, screw those guys. They've won before. So I think there is a difference there, and that's what I'm saying. I think people are going to get sick of it.
The interesting part too is like, so now, okay, so, and I'll tell you something, there's someone kind of confirming this a little bit. I'll tell you about in a second, but it's funny. So now there are 2 America's teams in the division of the team that won the Super Bowl and yes. Now won 2 Super Bowls, right? And nobody was happy for them outside of Philadelphia, even when they won their first. And like, they've been through the years, either very competitive, Andy Reid, all those years, very competitive. Back in the 80s, they had actually really good teams when Buddy Ryan was coaching them. They were just in the wrong division with Parcells and Gibbs for all those years. Dallas was good too early in the year. Like, they were just in the wrong division. Like, they actually had good teams. Randall Cunningham was really good. Like, Reggie White was really good. They were just in the wrong division all those years. When they finally got to this point and they actually won 2 Super Bowls, nobody was happy for them. They'll never be America's team because of their fan base.
That's right.
Because of their fan base, because they're so wildly unlikable that even when it became their turn for the first time, nobody's happy for them. They're not Detroit here. Nobody's happy for them.
I'd argue, I would argue that people saw the positive in the first one because everybody was saying they had all of these teams that should have won. Like the Donovan McNabb years, everyone makes the argument that, like, how did they not win 1 with McNabb, Westbrook, Terrell Owens? Like, even
they won the division a million times. They were like a 1 seed. They had they were losing home games in the playoffs.
Right.
Yes.
Like, don't get me wrong. I was not actively rooting for them, but when they lost their first Super Bowl with McNabb, they did lose to Brady, and even that one's like, of course you lost to Brady. And then the second time around, they're playing Brady and Belichick again. A lot of
beating Brady, I think, was a storyline people liked.
Yes.
But not Philly winning. Foles winning was 100%. Something that they liked. Yes.
And like they still, like, Jason Kelce did the mummers thing at the parade, and like there was a little bit of likability. But then what happened? they became absolutely unbearable. The fan base reared its head in a way that we knew that it was going to happen. And now I couldn't root more hard against them at this point. And so I think the first one, there was an argument. Now, moving forward, same thing. People are sick of them. They don't want to see them win anymore.
Yeah.
The fan base facilitates this hate towards them that they love.
That's
and
right.
So I think people are doing what they should do, and that's root against them. So I'll make the argument. The first time around, there was a storyline of are they finally going to do it? And when they did, it was kind of I think when they did too, right? Weren't we the only division that every team had won a Super Bowl? I think that still might be the case now at that point. So looking at that too,
think about it, but it's probably true.
Yeah,
Detroit's never won one. Mm-hmm. Arizona's never won one. What's the other division?
AFC Buffalo hasn't won one.
Buffalo hasn't won one.
NFC
the
Cardinals
haven't won one.
Cardinals haven't.
The Browns never won one. The Chargers have never won one. And the AFC South, 3 of the teams have never won one.
Yeah.
So, no, it is true. I think I'm missing one NFC division because Detroit's never won one. Arizona's never won one. What's the other division? The South. Yeah.
Multiple.
Yeah, multiples there. Atlanta's never won one. Yeah.
So
we
there
are
you
the
go.
only division now that Philadelphia's won it, that every team in the division at least has won one. It's actually multiples now because they've won 2. We've won 3. Dallas has won whatever the number is, and the Giants have won multiples.
Yep.
So we're actually not only the only division that's at least won one, we're the only division that's won multiple. Every team's won multiple Super Bowls.
Right. So I think that the first time around, there was a little bit of a silver lining. And then you gave it a year or two, and it was right. I would actually say a year or two. Once they reset and brought in Sirianni and Roseman rebuilt everything, that's when everybody was like, get out of here.
Sirianni killed it because he was preening for the camera. He was there was a lot of Philly fan in him that was coming out as a coach that was so off-putting. And I think fan base there was they liked, and then all of a sudden they turned on him because he I think they were you need to do you can only do this if our team is dominant, and if you're not going to do this, then we're not going to put up with it. Go Birds.
Well, and
Jason Kelsey's the only one that's ever come out of there that people are universally I actually like that guy. Yeah.
Right. Out of this era, yes. Because I was even thinking about this. Doug Peterson was oddly forgettable. Would you agree with me on that? Yeah. He never really had these moments where he was yucking it up with the fans or bringing on the booze or I don't even really remember any memorable sound clips from him.
15 years from now, there'll be a trivia question. What was the coach of the Eagles who won? Remember his name?
Yeah, right, exactly. And so, I'll use that argument of Peterson wasn't hateable to me. He was kind of boring, and I think the craziest thing he did was when he put your boy Suddy in for Hurts at the end of the 2020 season, and even then I still don't know where that command came from. That could have been Roseman being tank. I don't want to make the playoffs. That could have been the case. But either way, I remember way more about Sirianni than I do about Peterson. And that's a part of it. I don't like Sirianni. I think he's a jabroni. I don't like the way he acts. I think he's, just one of the more overrated coaches, but he's got the 3rd best winning percentage in NFL history. I can't argue with that. So anyways, that they're much more hateable now than they were the first time around.
So, this has got confirmed a little bit. Okay. So I was I Googled this morning, America's team because I was actually just looking for an article about what Majorie Harris said. But obviously, when you Google that, a lot all of a sudden pop up. And one was this, which was about the Cowboys, actually. Under the headline, TV networks confirm the Cowboys as America's team because even though they are the team that right now most people would pick to be what? Third, right? Third in the division. They might do better than that. And I went through the schedule the other day. And honestly, I see a path because I think their schedule is much more, you could be navigated much differently than Washington's or Philadelphia's. I don't know that their team is better than Washington or Philadelphia, but the schedule matters here. And if you look at it, even in a gauntlet at the end of the year where they're playing what looks to be a lot of really, really, really tough games, the majority of them are at home. So if they have a really good record, there's going to be margin for error for them even down the stretch where they could end up with a better record than people think. Anyway, they still, after all of that, got a number of night games and standalone games. They're going to be hosting Thanksgiving as usual. They're the Christmas Day game. They're the opener. opener. They'll have other night games too. So they still rate and they still are, quote unquote, America's team. Here came the quote, though. Mike Mulvihill's longtime Fox executive, where they pick, who gets the America's Game of the Week window all the time, did an interview with The Athletic and said this: sometimes we've heard exasperation from fans that the Fox 325 game, or 425 for us, but 325 Dallas time is always the Cowboys. It's still going to be the Cowboys sometimes this year, but you'll see a little bit more variety in terms of the top teams of late. In other years, we've gone looking for 5 or 6 Dallas games in that window. What we wanted for this year was more AFC, more Philly, but also more Detroit and a little more Washington to try to capitalize on the Jaden Daniels story. So there he is. This is the executive at Fox picking the window that is the top tier, Burkhardt Brady, looking for what is, quote unquote, America's team. And what he's saying is that actually doesn't really exist for anybody anymore. The Cowboys still really matter and they still really rate. But I think this goes back to, we're not in a day and age where Fox is the only provider of anything in that window any longer. There's a million different options to watch a million different things. Everything's spread out all over the place. The Cowboys are going to have a bunch of night games. They aren't even available for this window. And they're saying, though, we want Jaden Daniels too. So are we America's team? Whether we want to say it or not, I think for this year, we've got the curiosity of the league. We are the darling of the league. And I think everybody wants to see what year 2 Jaden Daniels is. And then we'll see how it shakes out from there. So it's a big year for expectations for everybody to prove what happened a year ago was not flukish. And I don't think it is, but the schedule reads like everyone doesn't believe it is either. All the executives are saying we don't think it is. But you will have to put your money where your mouth is on this one, because they're profiling you as the darling or America's team.
On this front, too, I would say don't underestimate a superstar in a top 10 market now. Like, that tells you what can overtake that kind of branding. Like, growing up, there was one team that I always never really understood why they weren't bigger. And for me, it was always the Chargers. Like, here it was. They had Drew Brees. They went into Phillip Rivers. They had a Hall of Fame running back, one of the best running backs of all time in LaDainian Tomlinson. Yet they were never on those primetime slots. Well, I kind of figured as I grew up, duh, they played in San Diego. Like, why would the league really want to push that market, even though they had some good players? Here it is. We're in a top 10 market. It took a year of having a franchise quarterback for them to go ahead and pump that franchise back up. Yes. Like, that's where I've kind of landed on this too. I think you need the right market for this to happen, where with Dallas, it didn't really matter who played for them. They would rate. I also would make this argument too. We live in a superstar era now. Like, we've been barreling down this in football. You can't hype it up as much because it is such a team sport still. But you and I talk about it all the time. You see little kids wearing jerseys of guys from all around the league because it's about pumping the superstars a lot of the time. Like, there's a park next to my house, and I see Justin Jefferson jerseys and Lamar jerseys and a bunch of different players because kids like to latch onto these guys. Jaden is that guy right now. And I would make the argument, who's the guy for the Cowboys that is that level of superstar? Like, I don't know, a grown man could wear a Micah Parsons jersey. I'm not seeing the 8-year-old at the basketball court wearing a Micah Parsons jersey, though, So I'm just saying, I think Jaden's also hit that point too, where they know he sells, and he sells of all ages, essentially.
The funny part was too, when I did Google this morning, America's team, just see what would pop up, there were 3 different articles, and they all came up over the last 2 days. Arizona State is claiming their football program is America's team, which I thought was funny. And then there was a quote from Serena Williams' husband, because they're a part owner of Chelsea, the women's team, and they just won some major tournament, and he described them as the soccer team that's going to be America's team somehow. And then there's the article about the Cowboys, and then there's the article about Majorie Harris. So everybody these days wants to be America's team.
Arizona State, sit the you-know-what down. America's team's coming from the SEC. I don't know who they are, but they're coming from the SEC.
That's right.
Like, get out of here with that.
Yes, they probably won't be Alabama.
Right.
Without Saban there, probably won't be Alabama. But you're right. it will be an SEC team.
Like, I don't know. I would argue, honestly, it's Texas. Like, they haven't been good. Everyone argues Texas is back when they're not back sometimes. Like,
Arch is playing.
Arch is there right now. I would just say I think they might be the one that warrants that label. They could argue that label because we talk about them all the time, even when they're not good. So I don't know. Maybe it's them.
All right, let me take a quick break. Brave Buster Show is beyond 6:30 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. I want to go over some TV watching that I did, including the Favre doc.
Okay.
So have you seen this yet?
Not yet. It's on
okay, because it just came out. The Untold series, which is the Netflix group that does all these documentaries. And I had mentioned Shooting Guards, which is the Gilbert Arenas Javaris Crittenden story, which I'm going to get to in a minute because I did watch the Favre one yesterday. And it's funny that you had said, like, the NFL didn't really profile Phillip Rivers and the really, really, really good Chargers teams at the time. They did profile him in a small market. Brett Favre was as big as anybody in the NFL at the time. They did profile him for a number of years. And Green Bay stunk for a long time. People don't remember this because they've had all those years of Favre and all those years of Rodgers where they've been really, really good, dominant at times, MVP caliber quarterbacks. From like the 70s until Favre showed up, they were bad. For like 25 years, they were also ran bad, like Detroit bad. Anyway, I watched the Favre doc. It was very good. The problem is he didn't do an interview for it. Mike Holmgren didn't do an interview for it.
Oh man. Jeez.
Really not very. The only people connected to Green Bay when he was playing there that did an interview for it were reporters. Good ones, but still just reporters. The best part of it is Jen Sturger, who is the woman who, like, I don't even, the word accused isn't even right. She's got text messages and voicemails and all this stuff from him about how he had sexually harassed her. Yep. She does a long interview about how he basically ruined her career. And there is can I tell the spoiler of what she said that is the revelation that she said?
I mean, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So spoiler alert on this, because this is the part I think like nobody would believe or know. She goes, she said, she was like, what's the most interesting part of all of this? Because, she became like a model. They went through her whole thing. Yep. She was a Jets sideline host when he, tried to get her to sleep with him. And she goes, even after all these years, I think what people would never believe is I've never met him. Never, like, he got my number. He was harassing me all the time, but I got so uncomfortable, I stayed away from him, but I never actually had a conversation or met him. So, like, you'll hear all these voicemails and see all these text messages, and he's a full-on stalker. Like, he's just sending her all these things, like, come to my room, all this stuff. They never, according to her, ever met in person or had a one-on-one conversation, ever.
I'm not sure there was a way to make that situation worse. That just makes it 10 times worse, slimier, creepier. The fact that they never even interacted with each other is good God. I mean, I already don't like Favre because of the stuff that's happened recently with him, but
Mississippi, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's even worse. I mean, than we even imagined, essentially. It was already bad what happened to her, by the way. Because, like, I remember when that first happened and, like, we were not in the Me Too era and people had jokes about it. And like you and I work in this industry and we pretty much know that when something like that happens, you can't not think of whatever just happened. So like, I feel bad for her, but that's even worse than I would have imagined.
So, and then like, again, they don't have a lot of access because it's reporters that are talking about him from his time in Green Bay when he became, superstar Brett Favre and became, and again, this is important. They hadn't been good for a long time when they acquired him, and he ended up becoming MVP of the league and, best quarterback they had since Bart Starr and whatever, like harken back to the good old days. And then they won a Super Bowl and he became a legend, godlike. They described him as godlike. And the reporters basically were like, when the Jen Sturger stuff came out, they're like, we're not surprised. And they're like, because no one reported on what he was doing there when he was in Green Bay, they protected him, but him, harassing women, like this isn't a one-off, basically is what they were trying to say, that this was kind of the way he operated, all the time. Then they got to the Mississippi stuff. And they had interviews with people that were part of the program that he siphoned the money off of. He still claims he never knew where the money came from, which is preposterous because he's talking to someone who's getting him the money that runs the welfare program. So, of course, he knew where it came from. Did he totally understand that because he's not in government, that is illegal? I don't know. Should he have known it was at bare minimum immoral? Yes, obviously. He should have never accepted money from a group like that. It wasn't just for the volleyball court. It was for all sorts of projects that he was doing. Anyway, it doesn't paint a very good picture of him, obviously. And the end result is, was he truly harmed by all of this? Was his the brand of being Brett Favre harmed? And you could argue, yes, he lost a lot of money in endorsements and all this stuff. So I would say this. You're not going to learn a lot watching it. It's a pretty good story, though, of the rise and the fall. But that's about it. You will learn nothing new. And unfortunately, he doesn't participate. So without his participation, or without the participation of the people who coached him, were around him all the time, because most of the interviews are not people who are actually close to him, it is missing that. So, but it's good. It's worth the watch. It's only an hour. It's very well done. But the access points are very limited in it.
Fair. I mean, I already have turned on him. Like, I prefer not to, like, I don't like him. I don't want to hear what he has to say. He's also not particularly, like, good with any of his opinions either. So he was one of the guys, too, that, like, to your point, like, did he lose some money off of all this happening? Sure. But I also don't think he did himself any favors whatsoever. Like, he was never that good with the media or, putting any takes out there that we should listen to. So, I mean, I'll push back on that argument, too. It is his own doing that he can't repair his own image as well because he's not as good as doing that, too.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Now, as for the other one, same group made the Gilbert Arenas Javaris Crittenden thing. When we talked about it a week ago, I'd only seen half of it.
Right.
So I saw the rest. And I did not realize that the rest would follow Javaris Crittenden and all the things that occurred in his life after basically the fallout of this incident, because he wasn't a superstar like Gilbert was, hadn't gotten all the money. He became toxic and almost nuclear to other organizations because they were like, he better be great, or how do you get around bringing this guy in? And so his life spiraled. And he ended up, he went through the whole thing where he was like, I was robbed a couple of times in my old neighborhood. I went looking for this guy. I ended up shooting the wrong person. I went to jail for it. He got out because he had connections, sooner than he probably should have. He comes off as someone who is reformed, sorrowful, remorseful, all of that stuff. But they never actually go back to what happened to Gilbert after all of this. And then the other part, so like that, I thought was a miss on all of that. And then they just basically were like, he's just like, it was left at like, Gilbert's like, I'm fine. They never did the fallout of he got injured. He ended up going to these other teams. He never got his career back on track. Like they never did any of that stuff. And then I will go back to the beginning of it, which I will say this, and this is because we know this story because we've talked about it a million times. They gloss over that he was homeless, Gilbert, a little bit. Like, yeah, his dad tried his best with him and he lived with his single dad, but they totally glossed over his background. They didn't make it sound like it was the level of hardship that it actually was, which I actually thought did a disservice to the story. And then the one that really got me was Crittenden gets drafted by LA, goes out there, isn't playing very much, is basically benched. He doesn't know what to do about it, kind of loses his mind, and joins the Crips. Okay. And they mention this and they talk about it in like a 30-second thing, like, and then he joined the Crips, and then they move on. And I'm like, I think that point needs to be looked into just a little bit more, because I don't know anything about this, but I'm going to go with you don't just join them. There's a lot of things that kind of have to happen to join them. And they totally glossed over that entire thing. And then all of a sudden, he's involved in the types of activities associated with gang violence. And so I feel like this was too surface. The whole thing to me was too, like, they got into the incident and I thought they covered that really well. So if you didn't know it, you'd understand what happened. You'd understand the perspective of Gilbert just being kind of a clown and doing something clownish that went too far. And then he even admits that he went too far, and Crittenden, who took it way too seriously. Like, you get that, and then you hear about the reporting of it, and all that's great. But the beginning glosses over too much, and the end just loses Gilbert in the storyline altogether. So I give this a B- is what I give this one.
This is what we always run into, though, when a story like this is put on a documentary, and we lived it day to day, though. Like, that's the problem here, because
sure,
90% of America didn't know most of those details. And like, that's honestly, like, this is unfortunate. This is what the modern documentary has become, though. Like, it has just become a rehashing of what happened, because the news cycles get so crazy. People honestly forget about these things. We didn't, of course, but I think most of America, that was a blurb on, in December, during an NFL season, and people don't realize how serious it was at the time. And
yes,
honestly, my whole thing, it's blending into me. It's blending in because he was on with Dan Patrick after I watched the documentary. Did he talk about the bullet situation on the documentary, or was that with Patrick? Did he talk about that?
I don't remember anything about a bullet situation.
Okay, so that was with Patrick, because he was on there to promote it, but I listened to it. To tell you how Gilbert was such a clown, but also thought things through, I think was also underrated here. Patrick asked him, he was like, were the guns loaded? And he was like, no, absolutely not. Like, I'm not that stupid. And he said the type of bullets that would have to go into those guns were going to have to be acquired, I think he said, in Maryland. And he was like, Crittenden was too dumb to go to Maryland to go get the bullets that go into that gun. So I knew I was okay. Like, that was the type of detail that I heard with Patrick that I was like, that should have been in the documentary.
Why isn't that in the documentary? I agree.
and it might have been Maryland, or it might have been Virginia. Like, I forget what it was, but he was just like, this guy isn't so serious that like I was ever really putting my life in danger. And I knew that to get the ammunition, you also had to have a license or whatever it was. And I was like, what? Why wasn't that in the documentary? Because that also changes the perspective of just how much Gilbert had actually thought about this. Even though it was stupid, he still gave it a little bit more thought than you think.
Yeah. It missed. Like, it tells this story. If you don't know anything about it, it's an interesting story. For us that know most of these details, it was missing so many things. And then I just didn't like that, like, Gilbert's life isn't what happened to like Javaris Crittenden, who ended up going to jail, right, for committing a murder, but like, you just stopped the storyline on him. Like, there's like, and then it just like, but that's not what happened. Like, so I don't know. So to me, it missed a little bit. All right. I want to talk about the Caps next. Brave Boston Show is at 6:30 Sports Capital. All right. Welcome back. The Capitals have to start the regroup now. And I was looking at their roster, and their brass already came out and said, we have the, quote, opportunity now to get younger, which I think we've been kind of waiting for a little bit. And they're going to have a real opportunity to do this in another year. This is going to be a very different team, I think, after next season. Because I was like looking through their cap. Obviously, Ovi is up after this year. And so who knows what he's going to do? We don't know. Among other forwards, Connor McMichael is a restricted free agent, but I think they're already talking about re-signing him. A couple other lower tier guys. Sonny Milano is in a final year of a deal, but he's been not healthy. Yep. And Brandon Duhaime is in the final year of a low rent type of deal. And then the big numbers that are popping up very soon, John Carlson only has 1 year left on his deal. He's 36 years old, so I'm assuming it's going to be his last year here. Trevor Van Riemsdyk doesn't make that kind of money, but he's 34, also only has 1 year left. And Martin Favre, who they're going to have to think about, is going to be a restricted free agent after this year. And I would assuming his health, because he had a bad injury here, that they would want to re-sign him too, but he's also very young. The shift is happening big time. So I don't know what you think is going to happen here, but I think they're going to let Ovi Carlson play out. They're going to get Oshie Backstrom off the books. I think they're going to go try to re-sign McMichael, and then they're going to start the process of finding very young players to replace these guys. It's going to be a very, very, very different team after next year.
The press conference with Brian McClellan and Chris Patrick's now the new GM. McClellan was elevated to team president. their presser went on about 30 minutes, and there were a couple things that jumped out. The first one was kind of what you were saying. They said they wanted to get younger, but I think it was Tarek El-Bashir that asked them, hey, like, you have Backstrom and Oshie coming off the books. And Patrick was pretty blunt. He was like, yeah, we're obviously moving on with our group without those guys. Like, just like two legends of the team, maybe the best center that's ever played in the uniform, but was just like, yep, we're moving on without those guys. And so it tells you too, like, I think the organization is turning the page as well on this era, which I'm not.
Well, neither one of them can play anymore. I mean,
I know, but it was fairly blunt to just say, like, don't even talk about those guys, like they are finished. And then the other one was about Ovechkin. Like, McClellan said out loud, don't rule out what this guy can do. Like, I think I think this team before this season was saying he'll play out those 2 years. After this year, I think they're leaving open the possibility of him maybe staying one more year after next year. We'll see how next year goes. It obviously depends. But I think that was one of the.
You can't pay him that number. I guess you have to if you're going to keep him. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah.
You say that, but he scored 44 goals last year. Like, I mean, that's like, say what you want about his night to night, like, play, but the dude still potted 44 goals. If he had played the whole season, he would have scored 50 goals. So 50 goal scorers don't grow on trees. So I see the argument for and against. So, and you're never going to let him leave the uniform. Like, he's not going to suit up with anyone else. Like,
yeah. And I mean, like, listen, I mean, Ovi will be an interesting decision. And then Carlson is 36 and he's got 1 year left. So he's another one that I'm assuming there's just no chance they're going to bring him back at a rate like that. So if he wanted to take some really cut rate to keep playing, I suppose they'd be open to that. But I'm assuming this is his last year too. So this is really, really, really turning a corner.
With Carlson, his replacement has been signed. Jacob Chikrin will take over the offensive defenseman role. We already saw him take over some of the power play duties. Like, his replacement is here. He will transition, whether it's retiring or he goes somewhere else. He's not going to be back, I think, after next season. You let him play it out, though. But either way, yes, they're going to get younger. Here's the good thing about the Caps, too. They reloaded their prospect pool really fast over the last couple of years. Like, they have some major prospects that over the next year and a half, you're going to hear about. You're going to have them come up a little bit here. So this is a good scenario because I think the most underrated part about heading into this offseason is the cap is rising significantly, and they're gaining cap from the players that are leaving. So they're going to load up again this offseason. I don't know, like, how you topped last offseason, but they're a little bit, kind of like, a little Rizzo-esque from the 2010s where they can kind of do no wrong right now. They know how to pick their players. So I expect them to be very active in the offseason too.
The names I didn't name were, I guess, Mangiapane must be a free agent. And Beauvillier, who they got at the trade deadline, must be a free agent too. So I guess they have decisions on them if they want to try to bring them back. I don't know.
With Mangiapane, he's not worth the money that they signed. I would sign him for a lesser deal, but Beauvillier,
was pretty good in the playoffs, actually.
I agree. I think that's kind of what the chatter was with Mangiapane, was that, like, he had the size and the speed to be good in the playoffs, and he was. I think their argument's going to be, we can't pay you that number for what you brought into the regular season. For Beauvillier, I would re-sign him in a heartbeat. I think his speed was great in that Carolina series. He didn't finish as much, but I think he fits in really well. I don't know what that number looks like. I'm privy to keep Beauvillier, though, over Mangiapane.
The last thing I just want to tell you, because I thought it was really funny, was I was looking at Sport Track is what I used to look at all the cap and the cap table for the Capitals. And it's really funny to see the name Thomas Wilson on the on the chart. Thomas Wilson. That's just a whole different picture in my mind of this player. When you say Thomas Wilson.
Can you get Locker to say Thomas Wilson instead of Tom Wilson?
Joe, he's Thomas Wilson.
See?
Thomas Wilson puts no biscuits in any baskets, Joe.
Tom does, though. Tom does.
Tom Wilson, yeah. Tom Wilson takes your head off. Thomas Wilson is a nice little 12-year-old boy. That's who Thomas Wilson is.
But by the way, real quick, you liked the Panthers last night against the Hurricanes?
Holy cow.
Told you.
I meant to say, like, this is real quick. I mean, both of them. Blowout City again in the game ones in both sides. Like, actually, I didn't see it coming in the OKC game. The first half was tight. And then all of a sudden, it was just a boat race in the second half, which bad sign for Minnesota. Yep. And then, Florida. I mean, I thought for sure, because they had to go to a game 7. Carolina had time off there at home. Wow. The second goal that Florida had, that was the most perfect shot I've ever seen that like dinged both posts in the corner. Unbelievable. So, I guess that's not going to feel good if Carolina goes out with a whimper, which I doubt. It's hockey. But if they do, it's not going to bode well for how we performed in the semifinals if they go out quickly here.
I said this, Florida is a machine right now. So I'm actually not really putting it on the Canes. I think Florida is team of destiny, franchise of destiny at the moment. But yeah, that was way worse than I thought it was going to be in game one.
I agree. All right. Talk to you all tomorrow. Bram Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital.